Hey everybody. So a couple days ago we talked about goaltenders who are playing better than I expected them to this year. Now I want to look at the other side of things and talk about some goaltenders that have been really disappointing so far this year. Now, originally I was going to make this a 5-person list like the last video, and then I went to the stats page on NHL.com and realized that there was no way I could pick only 5 players for this, because so far there have been a lot of disappointing goaltenders this season when you look at the numbers. So before we get into the video, I just quickly want to remind everyone to please hit that like button and give this video a thumbs up. That greatly helps out the channel. And if you're new to the channel or not yet subscribed for any reason, please hit that subscribe button and follow along for all my hockey content this season and all year round. So, goalies. There's been some good ones this year, and there have been some very, very bad ones this year. So for this list, I'm going to try and talk about goalies who either are starters or at least splitting starts with the team starter. I'm not going to talk about goalies that have only played a few games or are consistently the backup. But let's get into it here. Cory Schneider, who was supposed to be the starter for the New Jersey Devils, but has lost that starting job to Mackenzie Blackwood, who honestly hasn't been much better. We'll more about him later. But Cory Schneider has the worst save percentage in the NHL among goaltenders that have played more than one game. The worst save percentage in the NHL, .847. He's not even stopping 85% of the pucks that he sees in a game. He's 0-3-1 to start the year. His goals against average is almost 5 at .471 right now. 4.71 goals against. .847 save percentage. As bad as it gets in the NHL. Literally, Cory Schneider, I think, has been the worst goaltender in the NHL so far this year. And yeah, it's just been an absolute disaster. Mackenzie Blackwood has taken over that starting job. Blackwood's at least been able to win a few games, which Schneider hasn't, but he hasn't been all that much better. This year's been a complete disaster for the New Jersey Devils and Cory Schneider. This is a team that is not going to make the playoffs until they can figure out their goaltending situation. And the duo of Blackwood and Schneider ain't it, Chief. It ain't it. They're not going to do it. They are not going to get that team to the playoffs. And Schneider still has 2 years left on his contract after this year at $6 million per year. That's looking like a really, really bad contract at this point. So moving on, we've got another goaltender that used to be really, really good. Jonathan Quick with the LA Kings. Through 9 games with the Kings this year, Quick is 2-7 with an .859 save percentage and a 4.40 goals against average. Jonathan Quick is a multiple-time Stanley Cup champion, one of the best and most elite goaltenders in the league for a solid stretch. Now, the last few years has really, really gone downhill. Obviously, the team has gone downhill with him, but he personally has not been the goaltender that he once was over the last 3 years or so. He's really, really struggling. Injuries have been a major issue in his career, especially as of recent. So far, he's been healthy this year. He's played 9 games, but the numbers are absolutely atrocious. 4.4 goals against. I mean, that Jonathan Quick used to have a 2.4 goals against average. Now, I mean, he's giving up 2 more goals per game than that. He's looked terrible. And he's not, I mean, the team in front of him obviously isn't very good, but neither is he at this point. And that's an issue for the LA Kings, to say the least. Moving on now, Sergei Bobrovski with the Florida Panthers. Now, Bobrovski's a little bit different than the first 2 we've talked about because he's actually been able to win games. Bobrovski has a 6-2-3 record to start this year. And Florida's actually playing well and has been winning games. However, when you look at his numbers, Bobrovski only has an .882 save percentage and a 3.36 goals against average. So not exactly what you're looking for when you spend $10 million per year on a goaltender that you think is, a Vezina candidate year in and year out, and an elite NHL goalie. So that's been interesting. The Bobrovski situation is interesting because the team is still winning, and Florida is still, in a playoff spot and currently playing pretty well, but they're scoring a lot of goals, and that team has a lot of great offensive players. Bobrovski definitely has not played up to par yet. A goals against over 3 is not what you want to see from a goalie like Sergei Bobrovski, and a save percentage under 900 is not what you want to see. However, Bobrovski is a notoriously slow starter. I'm not necessarily worried about him long term, because we've seen him do this before, where out of the gate he's not great at the start of the season, and then by mid-year he's back where he used to be, and he ends up having a really good season overall. He is a notoriously slow starter, so I wouldn't necessarily worry too much if I'm a Florida fan right now. It just doesn't look great when you're paying a guy $10 million a year and he's putting up mediocre goaltending numbers. If you're going to give a goalie $10 million, you kind of want to see elite level production, and we have not seen that yet from Sergei Bobrovski, but that doesn't mean that he can't turn it around this season. And I think that certainly by mid-year and as we get into like January, I think you're going to see Bobrovski get back to being, what he normally is, and have a save percentage up between 910 and 920, and a goals against under 3, probably down towards 2.5. And I think he's going to get things together. Another goaltender that has certainly had some great years in his career, and also some not so great years, is not having a great one this year, and that is Devan Dubnyk with the Minnesota Wild. He has started 9 games for the Wild. He's 2-6-1. Obviously, the team in front of him isn't very good, but his numbers aren't great either, with an .883 save percentage and a 3.68 goals against average. Listen, the Minnesota Wild are a team that don't score a lot of goals, and if they're going to be good, and if they're going to be, which they're not this year, but if they're going to be a good team, they're a team that has to win 2-1, 3-2 type games, because they don't score a lot, and they need to get high-level goaltending. And in the past, Devan Dubnyk has given them that. This year, he is not. .883 save percentage is not nearly high enough. Anything under 900 for a goalie is pretty bad. And certainly when you're, a starting NHL goaltender and someone who's supposed to be, not necessarily elite, but at least a quality starter, under 900 for your save percentage is bad. And over 3 for your goals against is bad, and he's over 3.5 right now at 3.68. So not what you want to see if you're a Minnesota Wild fan from Devan Dubnyk. And again, he's getting older. The team in front of him isn't very good, which obviously affects him as well. The team's bad. He's going to be seeing a lot more quality chances against, but he's not playing great either. So he's definitely been disappointing this season. Next on my list from the Philadelphia Flyers is Carter Hart. So Carter Hart is still very, very young. And after he came up last year, actually played really well for the Flyers and wasn't able to turn their season around enough to where they made the playoffs, but he did play well enough to get people talking and say, like, okay, here's your goaltender of the future right here. So far this season, it's been a bit of a rough time for Carter Hart. He's 4-3-1, so he does have a winning record, but his save percentage is only .885, which really isn't high enough. Again, you want your goaltender to have a save percentage over 900, and .885 isn't going to cut it. His goals against is under 3 at 2.93, but I feel like all the hype surrounding Hart heading into this year and thinking that he's, going to be the Flyers' savior at goaltender, he really hasn't lived up to that so far. However, he's still very, very young. I think there's going to be growing pains along the way in the NHL for sure, and it's not going to be smooth sailing all the time. And I think overall, Hart is going to be a good goaltender long term for the Flyers, but kind of in a sophomore slump a little bit right now. And we'll see if he can turn that around as the season goes along. So the next two I want to talk about are from the same team. They've basically split starts so far this season. Jimmy Howard has played a few more games. It's Jimmy Howard and Jonathan Bernier in Detroit. Jonathan Bernier has a 2-4-1 record with an .887 save percentage and a 3.51 goals against average. He hasn't been great, although I would think of as more of the backup. Jimmy Howard's been pretty bad as well. 2-8 to start the year with an .887 save percentage, same as Bernier, but a 3.99 goals against average. So his goals against is definitely worse. And Howard and Bernier as a duo have not been very good this season, and that's definitely hurt Detroit a little bit, although Detroit themselves is a team with not a lot of expectations and really struggling as a whole. So again, that plays a bit of a role in it, but they're not getting quality goaltending or nearly the kind of goaltending that's going to lead to wins for a Detroit Red Wings team. The list goes on as I keep going with these really disappointing goalies. Martin Jones for the San Jose Sharks. He started 11 games this year. He's 3-7-1 with an .889 save percentage and a 3.38 goals against average. Obviously, the Sharks, I would say at this point, are probably the biggest disappointment in the NHL right now. I think they still only have 5 wins on the season, I believe. They've been absolutely awful to start this year, and their goaltending is a big reason why. Martin Jones has not been good. Obviously, you know the numbers. It's been a real struggle for him in goal, and it's been a struggle for the team. The team as a whole isn't really playing much defense. But Jones has got to be better than that. If you're going to be a goaltender who leads a team on deep playoff runs, you have to have a better save percentage than .889 and a goals against over 3. It's just not going to work. So Jones needs to play a lot better. So now we have Mackenzie Blackwood, who I mentioned earlier when talking about Cory Schneider. He has taken over the starting job with the New Jersey Devils and actually has a winning record on the year with a 4-2-3 record. However, his save percentage is only .891, and his goals against is almost 3 at 2.91. So not exactly the best numbers from Mackenzie Blackwood. He's been better of late. I'll definitely give him that. He started off, really, really bad along with Schneider. Blackwood's gotten a little bit better. Schneider really hasn't, so that's why he's taken over the starting job. But again, I don't think that the Devils are going to make the playoffs with a duo of Schneider and Blackwood in goal. Neither of them are playing that well, and that's a tough division that they're in. So next up is Jonas Korpisalo from the Columbus Blue Jackets. So obviously, Columbus lost Sergei Bobrovski to free agency this past offseason. There was a lot of talk about the Blue Jackets and, how far were they going to drop in the standings because of what they lost, losing Bobrovski, as well as some great offensive players like Duchesne and Panarin. And my expectations for Columbus this year were not very high. But now this is Korpisalo's first chance now to be a starter in the NHL after being Bobrovski's backup for a number of years. And he's 5-6-1 to start the season with an .892 save percentage and a 3.14 goals against. So obviously a huge decline in overall goaltending play for the Blue Jackets. Korpisalo so far has not really been even what I would call a quality starter. His goals against are over 3, save percentage under 900. It's certainly a steep decline from what Bobrovski usually was for Columbus. So Korpisalo, to me, has been a little bit disappointing, and goaltending, I think, is going to be something that holds the Blue Jackets back all year long, and probably a reason that they don't make the playoffs. And the last one I want to talk about, although I definitely could continue on, but the last guy I really want to touch on is Braden Holtby in Washington, because this is a contract year for Braden Holtby. His deal is up at the end of this year, and there's a lot of talk about Washington not being able to re-sign him, not having the cap space. Braden Holtby hasn't been all that great to start this season. He does only have one regulation loss. He has a 6-1-3 record, so he's finding ways to win games. But individually, his save percentage is only .895, and his goals against is at 3.30. So very un-Braden Holtby-like numbers so far from him this season. While the wins are still coming, the personal play is not nearly at the level that it usually is. Holtby is usually a guy that's in the Vezina conversation and thought of as a top 5 goaltender in the league. .895 save percentage is not usually what you see from him. He's usually someone up near .920 and near the tops of the league in that. And a 3.30 goals against is just way too high from what we normally see from Braden Holtby. So interesting that in a contract year, he's really not off to a great start. And while the team is still winning, his play has not been up to par yet. Again, I think this might just be a slow start for him, and we've obviously know what kind of goaltender he can be. And as long as he shows up in the playoffs, that's really what matters. But so far, it's not been an easy season, to say the least, for Holtby. And the backup in Washington, Ilya Samsonov, has actually played pretty darn well. So, maybe this is Holtby's last year in Washington. And as his numbers start to decrease, they go in a different direction, because it's going to be tough to fit Braden Holtby under the cap there in Washington. But anyway, I don't even know how many goaltenders that was. I wasn't really counting. But there have been a number of starting goaltenders who have been pretty disappointing so far this season. So, that's just something to watch. We'll see which ones get better as the year goes along. We'll see which ones remain at this level of just straight up not good enough. But all these guys I just mentioned so far have not been very good. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.